Greetings. My name is Commander Zilnax of the Korthian Science Fleet, and I have made what I can only describe as the most catastrophic mistake of my 300-year career. But let me back up, because you need to understand just how monumentally, spectacularly, hilariously wrong I was about everything. The Korthians, that's us, have been exploring this galaxy for approximately 12,000 years. We are, without question, one of the most advanced species currently flying around out here. Our ships can fold space like you'd fold a bedsheet. Our computers can calculate 1 trillion scenarios before you finish blinking. And our scientists have solved problems that would make your average mathematician weep into their datapad. We're good at what we do is what I'm saying. Over those 12 millennia we've made contact with 847 different species. 847. And here's the thing, every single one of them has been, well, predictable, boringly, wonderfully, safely, predictable. You scan their planet, you analyze their technology level, you review their biological makeup, you run it all through the computer and boom, you know exactly what you're dealing with. It's a science. A very exact science. We've got protocols for everything, manuals thicker than some planets, and a success rate of 100%. So when we detected species number 848 on a small blue planet they call Earth, I wasn't worried, not even a little bit. I was actually rather excited, if I'm being honest, because first contacts are generally the highlight of any exploration career. I pulled up the initial scans, sipped my morning nutrient beverage, and reviewed the data with the confident satisfaction of someone who has done this literally dozens of times before. Humans. That's what they called themselves. Adorable little bipeds, barely reached the space age, still using chemical propulsion for most of their rockets. Bless their primitive little hearts. Their planet was a decent Class M environment, nothing too extreme, nice oxygen atmosphere, plenty of water, comfortable, safe. The kind of place that produces soft, easy-going species that are just thrilled to meet the galactic community. According to our biological scans, they were fragile things. Thin skin, no natural armor, no venom, no claws worth mentioning, no redundant organs. Their lifespan was laughably short, barely a century if they were lucky. Their environmental tolerance seemed narrow. They required specific temperature ranges, specific atmospheric compositions, specific everything, really. I remember turning to my second officer, a thorough fellow named Brenvik, and saying, well, this should be refreshingly simple. Standard protocol, in and out, probably have them signed up for the cultural exchange program by next week. Brenvik nodded with that same calm confidence we all shared. Shall I prepare the usual greeting package, Commander? Absolutely, I said, leaning back in my command chair with what I can now recognize as absolutely unearned smugness. Let's give these humans the standard welcome. They seem like nice, reasonable beings. This should be easy. That word, easy. I would like to formally apologize to that word for what I did to it that day. Because nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing about humans would turn out to be easy. Not their biology. Not their behavior, not their logic, and certainly not their ridiculous, impossible, reality-defying resilience. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At that moment, sitting in my nice safe ship reviewing my nice safe data, I genuinely believed I had everything under control. I had no idea, none whatsoever, that I was about to meet the most baffling, infuriating, impossible species in the entire galaxy. Species number 848 was about to rewrite every single assumption we'd ever made about survival, adaptation, and the basic laws of what should and shouldn't be possible. And honestly, I still haven't recovered. Our first actual contact with humans happened on one of their outer colony worlds, a frozen nightmare they had cheerfully named Frostbite Station. And yes, they named it that on purpose, which should have been my first warning sign. But we'll get to that. The planet was hostile. I'm not being dramatic here, I mean genuinely, measurably hostile to life. Surface temperature was hovering at -60 degrees Celsius. The wind was strong enough to peel paint off a hull, and the atmosphere had just enough oxygen to technically qualify as breathable, but not enough to make it comfortable. Our environmental database classified it as a void unless absolutely necessary for survival. Humans had built a research station there, a permanent one, with over 200 people living in it. For science, they said. For fun, apparently. I led the landing party myself, because I'm thorough like that, and also because I was still operating under the assumption that this would be straightforward. My team consisted of 6 officers, all wearing our best environmental suits, rated for extreme conditions up to -90 degrees. The suits were humming at about 70% capacity the moment we stepped outside. 70%. We'd landed in conditions that were already pushing our equipment toward its limits. The human who came out to greet us was wearing a jacket. Just a jacket. A puffy red jacket that looked warm. Sure. But it was just fabric. Fabric. No environmental shielding. No thermal generator. No emergency oxygen supply. She had a knitted hat on her head, the kind with a little ball on top, and she was holding a steaming cup of some dark liquid in her bare hands. Her face was exposed to the air. Her actual face, no helmet, just out there in the -60-degree weather like it was a perfectly normal thing to do. "Hey there," she said, walking toward us with a smile that suggested she wasn't currently standing in an environment that should be actively killing her. "Welcome to Frostbite Station. I'm Dr. Caleb Brennan, Xenobiology Department. You folks must be freezing in those suits. Want to come inside?" I stared at her. My translator was working fine. The words made sense, but the situation did not. "Dr. Brennan," I managed, my voice probably sounding strangled through the suit's speaker system. "Are you, and I mean this with absolute sincerity, are you aware that the current temperature is -60 degrees? She glanced down at a small device on her wrist. "Oh yeah, bit chilly today. Usually hovers around -55. But we got a cold front moving through." She took a sip from her cup, completely unbothered. "This is actually perfect ice fishing weather. You guys ice fish where you're from?" "Ice fishing." She said ice fishing, like it was a recreational activity. In -60-degree weather, my suit's environmental monitor beeped a warning that we were now at 75% capacity. "Dr. Brennan." I tried again. "Our environmental suits are operating at 3/4 of their maximum capacity just to keep us alive in these conditions. You're wearing, and forgive me if my translator is malfunctioning, you're wearing a jacket. Oh this." She looked down at her coat like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. "Yeah, this is my light one. Didn't think we'd be out here long. Gets pretty toasty inside the station, honestly. We keep it at like -5 in the labs. Really comfortable working temperature." -5. Comfortable. My second officer, Brenvik, made a sound like he was choking. Kayla noticed our distress. Or maybe she was just being polite, because she gestured back toward the station. "Come on. Let's get you inside before you guys overheat in those suits. We've got coffee, hot chocolate, some really excellent stew going. Made it myself." As we walked toward the station, my mind was racing through the biological data we'd collected. Humans were supposed to be fragile. They were supposed to need specific environmental conditions. They were supposed to be, and I'm quoting our own database here, vulnerable to temperature extremes. "Dr. Brennan," I said, because I desperately needed answers. "Do humans regularly inhabit environments like this?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh sure. We've got colonies in way worse places than this. There's one station on Helheim, that's the ice moon we're orbiting, where it gets down to -120 on a warm day. My cousin works there. Says it's peaceful." She paused, then added with what I can only describe as pride, "Some people even vacation here. We've got a ski resort about 50 kilometers north. Great slopes. Barely any lines." Vacation. Ski resort. Barely any lines. My environmental suit hit 80% capacity, and for the first time in my career, I began to suspect that our database might be incomplete. Very, very incomplete. We were sitting in the station's cafeteria, which was indeed kept at a balmy -5 degrees, and I was trying to wrap my head around the concept of recreational freezing when the alarms started blaring. Dr. Brennan didn't even flinch. She just took another sip of her coffee, which was apparently made from roasted beans and was strong enough that I could smell it through my suit's filters, and glanced at a monitor on the wall. "Oh, that's just a crash alert. Happens every few weeks. Someone's coming in too hot. Too hot. Coming in too hot." I watched through the cafeteria window as a human cargo ship basically belly-flopped onto the landing pad with all the grace of a falling brick. The impact sent up a spray of ice and snow. The ship skidded sideways, clipped a fuel depot, spun around twice, and came to rest at an angle that suggested several critical structural failures. "That looked bad," I said, which was possibly the understatement of my career. "Eh?" Dr. Brennan said, standing up. "Marcus flies like that. He'll be fine. The ship's hatch blew open, smoke pouring out, and a human male stumbled out onto the ice. He was laughing. I could hear it through the external audio feeds. He was holding his left arm at an angle that made my medical officer Plinth make a distressed whistling sound, and there was blood, actual human blood, running down the side of his face. Yo Kayla, the human, presumably Marcus, shouted across the landing pad. You see that landing? Stuck it. Totally stuck it. Your arm is broken, Marcus. Dr. Brennan called back through a communication panel. Yeah, I noticed, Marcus replied, still grinning like this was the best day of his life. It's cool though, just needs some tape or something. Tape. He wanted tape for a clearly fractured limb. Plinth was already moving toward the medical bay, pulling out the emergency stasis field generator, muttering something about shock and internal bleeding and imminent system failure. By the time we got Marcus inside, which he managed to do mostly under his own power despite the broken arm, and what looked like at least 3 cracked ribs, Plinth had the full medical scanner running. The results made absolutely no sense. Commander, Plinth said, his voice tight with professional distress. This human has a compound fracture of the radius and ulna, 4 broken ribs, a concussion, severe bruising across 40% of his body, and his blood pressure is elevated but stable. He should be unconscious. He should be in shock. By all reasonable medical standards, the impact forces alone should have killed him. Marcus was sitting on the examination table swinging his legs like a child, using his good hand to wipe blood off his face with his shirt. Hey doc, you got any painkillers? Nothing too strong. I've got another cargo run in like 6 hours. 6 hours. He wanted to fly again in 6 hours. Mr. Webb, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, you need medical stasis immediately. Your injuries are severe. You could die. Marcus looked at me like I'd just suggested he wear a formal gown to a combat arena. Die. From this? Nah man. I've had way worse. Last year I fell off a loading crane, broke both legs and my pelvis, was back at work in 3 months. He said this casually, like it was a fun anecdote. Year before that got caught in a decompression accident. Spent 2 minutes in hard vacuum before they got me back inside. That sucked. Not gonna lie, but I'm fine now. 2 minutes. In vacuum. Hard vacuum. Plinth made a sound I'd never heard him make before. Something between a wheeze and a whimper. Mr. Webb. I tried again. Vacuum exposure for 2 minutes should cause permanent neurological damage, pulmonary failure and almost certain death. Yeah, the docs said that too, Marcus agreed, cheerfully. But like I'm built different, I guess. Humans are pretty tough. My grandma got hit by a truck once, broke like 30 bones, and she lived to 92. Tough, old lady. He said this with pride. Genuine pride. His grandmother had been hit by a vehicle and he was bragging about it. Commander, Plinth said quietly, his manipulators shaking slightly as he reviewed the scan results again. Our entire medical database for this species is wrong. Catastrophically wrong. They shouldn't be able to survive these injuries. They shouldn't be able to survive half of what they apparently do regularly. Marcus finally agreed to let Plinth set his arm, mostly because Dr. Brennan told him he was being stupid, but he refused stasis, refused heavy pain medication, and spent the entire procedure telling us stories about other times he'd been injured. There was the time he crashed a shuttle into a moon and walked away with just a sprained ankle. The time he got caught in an engine fire and only needed skin grafts on 30% of his body. The time he, and I'm quoting here, accidentally stabbed himself with a welding torch and just poured some antiseptic on it and kept working. Plinth fainted halfway through the arm setting. Just collapsed. Our chief medical officer, a trained professional with 200 years of experience, fainted. I stood there, watching Marcus flex his newly casted arm and complain that it was too bulky, and realized with creeping horror that our biological database wasn't just incomplete, it was useless. Completely, utterly useless. After the medical disaster with Marcus, I reported back to the Corthian High Council and strongly suggested we move to formal diplomatic negotiations immediately. Not because I was confident, understand, but because I desperately needed someone else to deal with this before I had a breakdown. The council agreed, and we arranged a meeting on Neutral Station Gamma 7, a nice, safe, predictable space where nothing could possibly go wrong. I should really stop using that word. Possible. The human delegation arrived exactly on time, which was already suspicious because punctuality suggested they were taking this seriously. And in my experience, beings who take things seriously are usually more difficult to negotiate with. They sent one representative. We had a team of 12 including tactical analysts, legal experts, cultural specialists, and Brenvik, who was very good at reading body language and predicting negotiation outcomes. The human representative was an elderly woman named Helen Ortega. She was 78 years old, which for humans is apparently quite old, though given what I'd learned about their durability, I wasn't taking anything for granted anymore. She had gray hair, smile lines around her eyes, and she was carrying bags. Multiple bags. This was not standard diplomatic protocol. "Hello. Hello," Helen said, walking into the negotiation chamber like she was entering someone's home for dinner. "I'm so sorry, I'm a bit loaded down here. I brought some things." She hefted the bags onto the conference table, which was very much not designed for bag hefting. "I hope you don't mind, but I thought we could eat while we talk. Negotiations always go better with food, don't you think?" I glanced at Brenvik. He looked as confused as I felt. "Ambassador Ortega," I began, "we have nutritional provisions available if required, but typically formal negotiations are conducted without food." "Oh, nonsense," Helen said, already unpacking containers. The smell hit me first. Something warm, something with spices I couldn't identify. Something that made my sensory receptors light up in ways I didn't know they could. "I made empanadas. These are beef and cheese, absolutely delicious. Been making them for 50 years. And I've got some cookies here. Chocolate chip, my grandmother's recipe. And some fruit. Because I wasn't sure what you folks eat, but everyone likes fruit, right?" She was. And I need you to understand this clearly. She was trying to feed us. The human diplomatic strategy was food-based. "Ambassador," I said weakly, "we appreciate the gesture, but we really should begin the formal negotiations. We have a lot of treaty articles to review." Helen looked at me with the kind of expression that I would later learn humans call the grandma look, which apparently transcends culture and species. "Sweetheart," she said, and yes, she called me sweetheart. "We'll get to all that. But first, you're going to try an empanada, because you look stressed and everyone makes better decisions on a full stomach." I tried to protest. I really did. But somehow, and I still don't understand how this happened, I ended up holding a warm empanada and taking a bite because refusing felt impossible. It was. And I hate admitting this. It was delicious. My taste receptors basically threw a celebration. Brenvik was already on his second one. Helen settled into her chair, looking satisfied. "Good. Now then, I know you have concerns about Earth joining the galactic community. I've read your preliminary reports. Very thorough. But let me tell you a little bit about humans first, if that's all right." This was not standard negotiation procedure. We had an agenda. We had talking points. We had a carefully structured discussion framework that had been refined over thousands of years. Helen completely ignored all of it. "My grandmother," she began, pouring what appeared to be tea from a container she'd also brought, "came to America with nothing. Absolutely nothing. She was running from a war, lost her entire family, spoke maybe 10 words of English. She was 17 years old." Helen's voice was steady, but there was something in it, something that made my translator work overtime trying to capture the emotional subtext. "She worked 3 jobs, raised 4 children by herself after my grandfather died in another war, and she lived to see her great-great-grandchildren graduate from university. She used to say, 'Mijita, we survive because we have to, and we thrive because we refuse to do anything else.'" I was listening. We were all listening. This wasn't data, this wasn't legal framework. This was something else entirely, and my tactical computer was trying desperately to analyze it and failing. "Humans have been through a lot, Commander Zilnax," Helen continued, meeting my eyes directly. "We've had wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters that should have wiped us out a dozen times over. We've made terrible mistakes. We've done terrible things to each other. But we're still here, and we're trying very hard to be better than we were." She paused, took a sip of her tea. "That's what I want you to understand. We're not perfect. We're messy and emotional, and we make decisions that probably don't make sense to you. But we care. We care so much it probably looks like a weakness, but it's actually our strength." Brenvik was crying. My second officer, a hardened veteran of 800 diplomatic missions, had tears running down his face while eating a chocolate chip cookie. "The resilience you've been documenting," Helen said gently, "it's not just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the fact that we get knocked down, and we get back up because someone we love is counting on us, or because we promised we would, or sometimes just because we're too stubborn to quit." She smiled. "That's what you're really negotiating with. Not just a species that refuses to give up." My tactical computer made a small popping sound and shut down completely. Just crashed. Couldn't process what was happening. Helen slid a plate of cookies across the table. "Now then, about those treaty articles. I think we can work something out that makes everyone happy. But first, tell me about your family, Commander. You wear a kinship badge on your uniform. Who gave it to you?" "And somehow, against all my training, against all protocol. I told her about my bonded partner, about my offspring, about the kinship traditions of my people. She listened like it mattered, like I mattered. The negotiations took 3 days. We agreed to everything the humans proposed. Everything. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that I still don't know if we got manipulated or if Helen Ortega genuinely just wanted everyone to be happy and fed. Brenvik thinks it was both. He also asked for her cookie recipe. After the negotiation incident, which the Council was still trying to classify as either a stunning diplomatic success or a complete tactical failure, the High Command decided they needed hard data. Real data. Data that couldn't be influenced by empanadas or emotional storytelling or grandmothers who weaponized kindness. "We need to test their limits," High Chancellor Vorn announced during the emergency session. "Properly test them. No more anecdotal evidence, no more surprise encounters. We design controlled environments, extreme conditions, and we see exactly how adaptable these humans actually are." I should have argued. I should have told them this was a bad idea. But honestly, part of me wanted to know too. Maybe, just maybe, we'd been getting outliers. Maybe most humans weren't like Kayla or Marcus or Helen. Maybe we'd just been unlucky. So we designed the test. 6 different planets, each one representing an extreme environment that pushed the absolute boundaries of known survivability. We'd send human volunteers, because apparently humans volunteer for dangerous things all the time, and we'd monitor them for 30 days. Our projections suggested they'd last maybe a week before requesting extraction. 2 weeks at the absolute maximum. The humans sent 6 teams of 20 people each. They seemed excited about it. That should have been warning sign number 1012, but I was tired of warning signs at this point. Planet 1 was designated Scorch. Desert world, surface temperature during the day hit 70 degrees Celsius, dropped to -20 at night. Minimal water sources, constant sandstorms. Atmosphere was technically breathable but full of abrasive particles. Survival rating for most species was not recommended under any circumstances. Day 15 report from Scorch came in, and I was drinking my nutrient beverage when I opened it, which was a mistake because I immediately choked. The humans had built a beach resort, on a desert planet. They'd constructed shade structures, set up something called volleyball courts, and were hosting what they termed a barbecue competition. The team leader, a woman named Rita Vasquez, reported that the heat was, and I quote, "pretty nice actually, reminds me of Arizona in summer." They'd found underground water sources, built filtration systems, and one team member had apparently started a garden, on Scorch. They weren't surviving, they were thriving, and they were having parties. Planet 2 was Drift, a zero-gravity asteroid cluster with no atmosphere and constant micro-meteor showers. We gave them environmental suits and a basic shelter module. Expected survival time was maybe 10 days before the psychological stress of zero gravity and constant danger became unbearable. Day 15 report showed they'd invented 3 new sports, including something called meteor dodgeball, which was apparently exactly what it sounded like, and extremely popular. They'd expanded their shelter into a multi-module complex, and were requesting permission to stay longer because, according to team leader Jackson Foster, "This is the coolest place we've ever been, and we're not done exploring yet." Cool. He called a deadly asteroid field cool. Planet 3 was Choke, toxic atmosphere world. Air was 60% methane, 30% carbon dioxide, 10% things that would kill most species on contact. Volcanic activity, acid rain, surface temperature that fluctuated wildly. This one I was certain. This one would break them. Day 12 report. Day 12. They hadn't even made it to day 15. I opened the file with shaking manipulators, expecting casualty reports. They discovered that the atmospheric gases could be used for cooking. They built something called a natural grill using volcanic vents and were apparently making the best steaks anyone had ever tasted. Team leader Polo Reeves included a recipe. A recipe. He sent us a recipe for how to cook meat using toxic atmospheric gases and geothermal heat. One of his team members had written a 16-page essay about the unique flavor profile of methane grilled food. I had to sit down. I was already sitting, but I had to sit down harder. Planet 4 was Sync, a high-gravity world at 2.4 times Earth standard, crushing pressure, dense atmosphere. Every movement should have been exhausting. Most species couldn't survive more than a few hours without serious medical intervention. The humans were doing strength training. They called it the best gym in the galaxy, and were requesting dumbbells. They wanted to bring weights to a high-gravity planet so they could make it harder. Team leader Derek Mills reported that his team had already adapted to the gravity and were setting personal fitness records. This is going to be amazing for our bone density, he wrote. Like that was a benefit and not a sign of impending skeletal failure. Planet 5 was Shiver, an ice world that made Frostbite Station look tropical. Minus 140 degrees Celsius average temperature, winds that could peel flesh from bone, frozen methane lakes. They went ice skating. On the frozen methane lakes. For fun, team leader Yuki Tanaka sent us photos. Actual photos of humans gliding around on blade-attached footwear, smiling, making what they called snow angels in frozen atmospheric precipitation. Best winter wonderland ever, her report said. Requesting hot chocolate supplies and more blankets, but otherwise everything is great. Great, she said, great. Planet 6 was Pressure, a deep ocean world with crushing atmospheric pressure at 20 times Earth standard at surface level. Dark, cold, hostile. We gave them a submarine and expected them to stay near the surface. Day 15. They were exploring thermal vents at depths that should have crushed their submarine like a tin can. They'd reinforced it using local materials and what one engineer called spite in mathematics. They'd discovered bioluminescent life forms and were taking samples. Team leader Chen Wei reported that the pressure was surprisingly comfortable once you get used to it, and that the ocean life was absolutely gorgeous. I was watching the reports come in, one after another, each one more impossible than the last. My manipulators were shaking. My sensory organs were having trouble processing what I was seeing. Commander, Brenvik said quietly, looking at his own datapad, they're not just surviving, they're not even just adapting. They're enjoying it, all of it. Every single environment we threw at them, they turned into a vacation destination. I sent the full report to High Chancellor Vorn. The response came back 3 hours later, just 2 words. Impossible. Recheck. So I rechecked. I rechecked everything. I reviewed every sensor log, every video feed, every biometric reading. I even contacted the human teams directly to confirm they weren't somehow faking the data. Rita from Scorch laughed when I asked. Faking it? Why would we fake it? This is awesome. We're actually thinking about requesting a permanent colony here. Beachfront property, you know. I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. The data was correct. All of it. Humans had taken our worst-case scenarios and turned them into recreational opportunities in half the time we'd predicted they could survive. High Chancellor Vorn still didn't believe it. Run the tests again, he ordered. There must be some mistake. There was no mistake. The only mistake was thinking we could find a limit to what humans could adapt to. They didn't have limits. They had suggestions. And they ignored those too. 3 months after the adaptability test disaster, which we were still trying to explain to the Council, the galaxy decided to throw us a real problem. Not a human problem, thankfully. Just a regular catastrophic threat to all known civilization kind of problem. The type we actually knew how to handle. A quantum anomaly had appeared in the Tertian sector, and it was eating star systems. Not quickly, mind you, but consistently. One system every 48 hours just gone. Collapsed into quantum uncertainty. No explosion, no warning, just there one moment and probability the next. Our top scientists converged on neutral station Gamma 7. the same place where Helen Ortega had emotionally destroyed my tactical computer. We had the best minds from 18 different species, computational power that could simulate entire universes, and detection equipment sensitive enough to measure a single atom's mood swing. We had been working on the problem for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of constant analysis, modeling theoretical frameworks, experimental proposals. We understood what was happening. That wasn't the issue. The anomaly was a cascade failure in local space-time, a quantum instability that was propagating through linked gravitational fields. We knew exactly what it was doing and why it was doing it. We just had absolutely no idea how to stop it. The equations didn't work. Every solution we proposed either required more energy than existed in the known universe, or would cause worse problems than the one we were trying to solve. We were stuck, completely, utterly stuck, and the anomaly was now 12 systems deep and accelerating. That's when Bobby Chen showed up. I didn't know who he was at first. Security just informed me that a human was at the docking bay demanding to speak with the science team about the quantum anomaly. My first thought was that this was another Helen Ortega situation, and I should probably just let it happen because resistance was futile. Bobby Chen was 26 years old, which is barely an adult by human standards. He was wearing stained coveralls, had oil or grease or some unidentifiable substance on his hands and face, and he was eating a sandwich. Just walking through our high-security science station eating a sandwich like he was out for a casual stroll. "Hey, sorry I'm late," he said through a mouthful of food. "Traffic was crazy. Anyway, heard you guys have a quantum problem. Thought I could help." Dr. Zilnax, our head physicist and winner of the Galactic Science Prize 4 years running, stared at Bobby like he'd just declared himself Emperor of Mathematics. "Young man," Tallis said with barely controlled irritation, "we have been working on this problem for 3 weeks with the most advanced scientific minds in known space. What exactly do you think you can contribute?" Bobby swallowed his bite of sandwich. "Well, I fixed a similar problem last year on a mining station in the Kepler belt. It's different scale obviously, but same basic principle. Quantum cascade, right? Space-time getting all wobbly." "That is," Zilnax said slowly, "an extremely reductive description of a complex multidimensional phenomenon, but yes, essentially." "Cool, Bobby said, pulling out a datapad that looked like it had been dropped several times and possibly run over by a vehicle. "Can I see your models?" I should have said no. I should have had security escort him out, but there was something about the way he said it. This complete lack of doubt or hesitation, like he genuinely believed he could help. Also, we were desperate. Tal, desperation makes you do stupid things. We showed him the models. All of them. Weeks of work from the brightest scientific minds in the galaxy. Bobby looked at them for approximately 4 minutes while finishing his sandwich. Then he said, "Oh yeah, I see the problem. You're thinking about it wrong." Zilnax's sensory stalks went rigid with offense. "Excuse me. You're trying to counter the quantum cascade with quantum stabilization, right?" Bobby was already typing on his beat-up datapad. "That's not gonna work because you're fighting the cascade on its own terms. You need to interrupt the propagation vector before it establishes quantum entanglement with the next system." That's Zilnax started, then stopped. "That's not possible. The entanglement happens faster than light. There's no way to interrupt it." "Sure there is," Bobby said cheerfully. "You just need to create a temporary null field in the gravitational medium using phased harmonic interference. Basically you make space-time deaf for like half a second so the cascade can't find the next system to entangle with." The room went silent. Complete total silence. "That," Dr. Mornix from the Quantum Research Institute said slowly, "that shouldn't work. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical." "Nah," Bobby said, pulling up new calculations on his pad. "You use the cascade's own energy against it. Redirect about 40% of the quantum flux through a tuned resonance field. Use that to power the null field. Basically quantum judo." "Quantum judo." He said, "Quantum judo. I have never heard that term in my entire career," Zilnax whispered. "Yeah, I just made it up," Bobby admitted. "But look, here's the math." He transferred his calculations to the main display. It took us an hour to verify his work. An hour of checking and rechecking, because none of us believed it could be that simple. But the math worked. It actually worked. Bobby had solved in 4 hours what 18 species of top scientists couldn't solve in 3 weeks. How, I asked him. because I desperately needed to understand. How did you see this when we couldn't? Bobby shrugged, pulling out another sandwich from somewhere. I mean, I haven't slept in like 3 days, so I'm probably not thinking straight, which maybe helps. Also, I dropped out of formal university because it was boring, so I don't have all the traditional training telling me what's impossible. He took a bite. Sometimes you just gotta try stuff and see what works, you know? Try stuff, and see what works. That was his scientific methodology. Mr. Chen, Thenix said, and I could hear the existential crisis in their voice. You've just saved potentially hundreds of star systems. The Galactic Science Council will want to award you the highest honors. There will be significant monetary compensation, academic recognition, anything you want. Bobby thought about it while chewing. Nah, I'm good. This was fun though. Good brain teaser. I was getting bored working on the mining station anyway. He wiped his hands on his coveralls. Oh, one thing though, you're gonna need to actually build the null field generator. I can sketch out the design if you want. But fair warning, it's gonna look janky as hell. Janky. As hell. 4 hours later, Bobby had designed a device using what he called duct tape, prayer, and spite. The design included parts that shouldn't work together, materials that had no business being in a quantum device, and assembly instructions that included phrases like just wiggle it until it fits, and if it starts humming, that's good. We built it exactly to his specifications because at this point, why not? Reality had stopped making sense weeks ago. It worked perfectly. The quantum anomaly stopped at System 12. The cascade was broken. Hundreds of billions of lives saved. Bobby Chen left before the official thank you ceremony, saying he had a cargo run to finish and he was already behind schedule. He refused every award, every payment, every recognition. It was just a thing that needed fixing, he told me, before he left. That's what humans do. We fix things. I watched his ship depart. This young human who had casually solved the unsolvable while eating sandwiches and running on no sleep. And I realized something terrifying. We hadn't been testing humans. We'd been failing tests we didn't know we were taking. And they'd been passing them without even trying. So here I am, standing before the Corthian High Council, about to deliver a report that will fundamentally change how we understand survival, adaptation, and the basic laws of what should be possible in this universe. Honorable Council members, I begin, and I'm proud to say my voice only shakes a little bit. After 6 months of comprehensive study, multiple field observations, and what I can only describe as ongoing psychological trauma, I am here to recommend a complete revision of our classification system for the species known as humans. High Chancellor Vorn leans forward. Commander Zilnax, your preliminary reports have been troubling. Please summarize your findings. Where do I even start? How do I explain this? Humans, I say carefully, are not simply resilient. Resilience implies the ability to recover from adversity. Humans don't recover from adversity. They befriend it, take it out for drinks, and then convince it to help them build a summer home. They don't adapt to extreme environments. They show up and immediately start redecorating. They don't solve impossible problems. They look at impossibility, shrug, and do it anyway because they were bored and had a sandwich handy. The council is staring at me. I don't care anymore. They survive temperatures that should kill them. They walk off injuries that should be fatal. They negotiate with feelings instead of logic. And somehow when they turn our worst-case scenarios into vacation destinations, and they solve quantum physics problems that stumped our best minds using something called duct tape and spite. I take a breath. They are, and I mean this with absolute scientific precision, they are completely insane by every reasonable measure we have. Commander Chancellor Vorn says slowly, are you suggesting they're dangerous? No, I say. And I mean it. I'm suggesting they're unstoppable. There's a difference. Dangerous implies threat. Humans aren't threatening, they're just incredibly, impossibly, frustratingly stubborn. They don't know when to quit because the concept of quitting seems to be missing from their cultural vocabulary. They look at the word impossible and treat it like a suggestion they're choosing to ignore. I pull up my final data compilation. In 6 months we have not found a single limit to human adaptability. Not one. Every test we designed, they passed. Every challenge we presented, they overcame. Every time we thought we understood them, they did something that broke our models again. I pause. I am recommending we classify humans as a Category X species, unprecedented survival capability, and that we update all our protocols accordingly. Category X has never been used in 12,000 years of exploration, Vorn says. I'm aware, I reply. We've never needed it before. We do now. The council votes. It passes unanimously, probably because none of them want to be the ones dealing with humans directly anymore. As I'm leaving the chamber, my communicator chimes. It's a message from Earth, from Helen Ortega, because of course it is. Commander Zilnax. The message reads, "We're having a backyard barbecue next weekend to celebrate the new treaty. You and your crew are invited. We'll have plenty of food, some cold drinks, and my grandson wants to show you this thing he built in his garage. He says it's a faster-than-light engine, but it runs on vegetable oil. Anyway, hope you can make it. Bring your family." A faster-than-light engine that runs on vegetable oil, built in a garage, by someone's grandson. I should decline. I should maintain professional distance. I should absolutely not expose my bonded partner and offspring to whatever chaos humans consider a casual social gathering. Brenvik is reading over my shoulder. Are we going, he asks. I'm so tired. I'm tired of being surprised. Tired of having my understanding of reality shattered. Tired of fighting the inevitable. Yes, I say. Because at this point, why not? Yes, we're going. Tell the crew to prepare for deployment. To a barbecue, Brenvik asks. To whatever humans decide a barbecue actually is, I correct him, which based on everything we've learned, could be anything from a simple meal to a complete restructuring of our understanding of thermodynamics. And so, the Corthian science fleet, veterans of 12,000 years of exploration, discoverers of 848 civilizations, updated our protocols for the first time in our entire history. We added a new section. Just one line, really, but it's an important one. When dealing with humans, expect the impossible. Prepare for the absurd, and bring an open mind because you're going to need it. Also, apparently bring an appetite. Helen says the burgers are amazing. I'm choosing to believe her. At this point, fighting it seems pointless. Besides, Brenvik really wants that cookie recipe, and I've been instructed by my bonded partner to ask about the empanadas. We've explored the galaxy for 12 millennia. We've seen wonders beyond imagining. We've encountered countless species and solved mysteries that would make most beings weep. And then we met humans and realized we didn't know anything at all. They're absolutely impossible. 'Tis completely illogical, thoroughly inexplicable. And somehow, against all reason, they've become my favorite species in the entire galaxy. Don't tell the council I said that. They're already worried about my mental state. Though honestly, after 6 months of studying humans, I think a little insanity is probably healthy. At least that's what Marcus told me while he was teaching me something called skateboarding with his still healing arm. Humans, can't live with them, can't understand them, apparently can't stop inviting them to solve your impossible problems while they're eating sandwiches. Welcome to the new galactic reality. It's weird here, but the food is excellent.